that in 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded to 3 researchers who had been investigating what's called non-local unity of our entire universe for years. Now, non-local unity means that the Tao is our natural state as conscious co-creators, and it's a both and. It means that within space-time there is also a causation. We can also tell a story of a universe that began nearly 14 billion years ago.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, and I've got an incredible guest here today. I've really been looking forward to having this conscious conversation. I want to welcome to the podcast Dr. Jude Currivan, and I want to express that her definition of herself is in so many different ways, but planetary healer, I believe, is an incredible introduction to my audience about just some of the incredible things that you're bringing to the present moment for any conscious seeker today. So I want to welcome you to the podcast, my dear friend.
Thank you, San. It's a delight to be with you and all your community. So again, thank you for the invitation.
And so let's start with a little bit of you can give a summation however you choose to, just sharing a little bit about yourself leading up to this point.
Oh my goodness, how long have we got?
My confession.
We could be here a long time. Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean, it's been an incredibly scenic route. I mean, I know for all of us, our journeys are unique, and yet all of us are also on this, it seems to me, this common pathway of what it means to be a human being, a spiritual being having a human experience and walking this earth walk. So mine's had its ups and downs, its cul-de-sacs, its turnarounds, like everybody else's challenges. But, it has been a journey. I was born in the north of England, or the Midlands of England, actually, to a coal mining community. My dad was a coal miner. My granddad was a coal miner. My mother was a housemaker until my dad died when I was 10 and my brother was 7. And then she had to go out in the world and earn money. And so I grew up quick because I was the eldest daughter, and helped mum as much as I could. So it became very clear to me very young that, my life was to be very grounded in this earth walk. And yet my predisposition was to walk amongst the stars. I looked up from the most earliest of ages. I have walked between worlds since I was 4 years old. So my journey has been one of a dance, of balancing the grandness of multidimensional reality and mindful, conscious, universal sentience with this really grounded journey. From growing up and then going to Oxford, doing a physics degree in cosmology and quantum physics, and then going into the workplace and becoming an accountant and then a senior figure in the international business world. But always, always, always at the very heart of my journey was a curiosity about the nature of reality. So 30 years ago, I got the tap on the shoulder again to leave that corporate world and serve, as you said so beautifully in your introduction, to serve. So my lifelong journey has ultimately been one of service for the good of the whole. And that means not just the human whole, it means the multidimensional realities that I've explored since childhood. And perhaps most importantly to my heart and to my soul is that relationship with our planetary home, our primordial mother, Earth. So when I describe myself as a planetary healer, it's not in any impositional way, but it's a perspective of service to healing our relationship with our primary mother. And so that is my ongoing journey, because unless we wake up to remember that we're inseparable, that we get over this illusion of separation, that we actually, answer the call of our universe to evolve consciously, that is fundamental, it seems to me, to healing our relationship with ourselves and with Gaia and literally with the whole world. So that's been the journey, and that's a big part of my work now, is both healing our relationship with ourselves and Gaia and also serving conscious evolution. They go hand in hand, arm in arm. Again, it's a dance.
Wow, you had me at hello. What can I say? That was so beautiful. Just the way that the way you entered all that incredible, dense substance, because the visceral experience that our audience is having right now, the charge that you and I are experiencing, the amplitude that's going on within our physical flesh, is an indicator of the expansive moment of now.
Yeah.
And my goodness, you probably heard this before, that expansive chill that continues to repeat itself is the now moment. Now, I mean, maybe you have or haven't heard it. Maybe I'm a little biased, and you always bang your drum initially to create an awareness of this now moment and go, wow, I had no idea there was something more than this mundane 3D reality that I operate in from 9 to 5, 7 days a week. How do I get past that? How do I get into a deeper state of understanding what that means? And I can see through your own confession, your own journey, you have this incredible sort of symbiotic relation. Oh, excuse me, I apologize. Symbiotic relationship between intellect and intuitive. And instead of, it's quite interesting. A dear friend of mine, Tom Campbell, sort of confesses his, this ability to actually apply this intellect-based reality. He had to earn his licks on that one, because everything was intuitive. And now, of course, that's his mainstay of understanding reality from that perspective. And so a deeper knowing from a physicist perspective, from an intellect perspective, embodying this. And you have this ability, because anyone that knows me, students, OGs of the 126, the subscribers, every time we have a conversation on this channel, it's the experience of what's going on between the two experiencers, the contributors, the collective that you and I are now experiencing, and people get this incredible aha moment. So tell us more about that. How was that? That was you confessed it was from your own recollection, the age of 4 as a child, and that's an incredible recall for anybody to be able to be that clear on the direction of their now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I had my first what I would call multidimensional experience from at the age of 4, when I experienced a discarnate light appearing to me, and then clairaudiently hearing on an inner level a voice. And that just really, it was a remembering of perhaps what is before we come into this earth walk. But it was so natural and so kind and so loving as a communication. It just invited me into this adventure. And this adventure has been my whole life. And so I've experienced so many numerous daily miracles and experiences of what I call supernormal phenomena. And other people such as Dean Radin also call it this. It's not supernatural, it's not paranormal, it's supernormal. But it's such a state with me that it's even when I'm doing the washing up. So it becomes very normal. But it's that extraordinary in the ordinary, and the ordinary in the extraordinary that's been the dance of my life. So having that experience so young and it being so natural, and then realizing through all the years that have come since that it's our natural attributes. It's not that I'm special in any way. I've just been privileged enough not to forget what many of us do forget or are pressurized into, not acknowledging. But it is all that we are. It is the reality of who we are. We are these microcosmic co-creators of this wondrous, sentient, living, loving, evolving universe. And so that's been the journey. So it was profoundly intuitive. It was profoundly experiential from that very early age. And then I brought into that dance a perspective of wanting to understand how this all worked, because it was certainly not what I was being taught at school, and it was not what I was being taught at university. When I was at Oxford, you know, I specialized in cosmology and quantum physics. But what I was experiencing was not being taught there, because what I was being taught was still a cosmology, essentially of materialism, and even with the quantum clues of separation. So for me, the deepest teaching, the biggest guidance, in addition to my own experience, were the ancient wisdom and indigenous wisdom teachings. So I look back to the Vedic tradition of ancient India. And I look back to the what we call rishis, the great sages there, who described reality in the way I was experiencing it. Over time, I had the great privilege of spending time with many indigenous communities and their understanding of the web of life. I spent a lot of time looking at the ancient Chinese tradition of the Tao and understanding that. So I sort of wove all the fundamental, most profound teachings of universal wisdom and indigenous wisdom that were showing me, were validating in a way what I was experiencing. So that's been the journey. It's only recently, very, very recently, that I've been able, with the evidence that's now available, to really serve the convergence of science and spirituality. Because at the leading edge now, son, the discoveries are being made more and more and more that is actually verifying and supporting this perspective and turning that old paradigm of separation and materialism on its head. So it's been an incredible journey, but it's also an amazing privilege to still be walking this earth path at a time when we can have all the evidence really to help us to say, yes, this is who we really are. This is who we can awaken to remember who we really are.
Woo! Oh my goodness. You probably heard this question before, and I get this from Tom Campbell. People come up to him every day and they're like, hey, "You sure you're not a Buddhist? You're sure you're not a Taoist?" And I'm going to ask you the same question. Are you familiar with your past lives as a Taoist? Because that is the true essence of understanding this, you're all things and nothing at the same time. This present moment is all we have. And that contracting and expanding, which is really what we refine as the bellows, which is the access to what we call the mother, the Tao. So that center point between yin and yang, between the breath in and the breath out, is the Wu Ji. And that Wu Ji is where it all happens, that now moment, which accesses what we call the Wu Wei, effortless action, effortless effort, the flow that people are familiar with. Yes. So it's so beautiful the way that you have created your own path, realizing and remembering, which is really the definition of a Taoist seeker, is to return to the mother. And my goodness, now integrating everything that you have absorbed through all this incredible insight, how do you correlate that and communicate that with a community that is so limited, like physics or science in of itself, that potentially could go, hang on, you've been turned out from Oxford and you're giving us this woo-woo? Is that, this is how they talk. This is, they shut people down that do not have an evidence-based realization. And their evidence base comes in the form of mathematical equations. How do you create that relationship so that, they go, well, your background does not merit you going into this woo-woo sort of like experiential sort of stuff that makes no sense to us. How do they approach that for you?
I don't. I mean, when I was growing up, my mum, bless her, my mother, if we had 2 hours, I could wax absolutely lyrical about my amazing mum. I mean, she was and is my greatest guide. But anyway, she always used to say I'd speak with anybody. And she didn't she didn't know how many multidimensional beings I was speaking with. But I love to speak with folks. And when I do that, for me, communication is both hearing and listening and sharing. Okay. So all my life, I've had these incredible opportunities to discover, explore, converse, engage, communicate with many, 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 many different beings, human and otherwise. And so for me, what is most important is where there is, you spoke to it earlier, San, where there's a resonance, where there's a feeling that, yes, you can hear what I have to say and I can hear what you have to say. And I'm not saying that is all it is, but what I've learned is that I'm not trying to push water uphill. I'm not trying to persuade anyone of anything. And I'm certainly not trying to impose anything on anyone. What I've done all my life, and especially over this last 20 years, is I've shared what I understand. And I've invited people along in a journey that I don't think is about them or me. I think it's something greater than all of us, which is the evolutionary flow of our universe through us at this incredible, opportune time. And so what I do is in my latest work in the last 10 years, my last two books, The Cosmic Hologram, The Story of Gaia, what I've been guided to do is that it's been now the time when we have incredible amounts of evidence, really grounded evidence across all scales of existence and many, many different fields of research that are supporting this perspective of essentially a living, loving, evolutionary, non-locally unified universe, where mind and consciousness aren't what we have, they're literally what we in the whole world are. Now, the point here is that the scientific discoveries are really moving the dial now. Two big ones, which is why I don't need to have those conversations, because those conversations and those scientists are now coming to the same perspective, which is really great. There are some that will not ever come beyond a materialist perspective, but there are many and progressively younger scientists that realize that the appearance of our universe, energy, matter, space, time, is not its most fundamental nature, that appearance emerges from deeper levels of intelligence and causation. And so the leading model of our universe, a cosmological model, which is the whole universe, is one that's based on our universe being a cosmic hologram. Now that might sound woo-woo, but the maths support it. Every theory that tries to model the nature of the appearance of our universe supports it. And now I would say a majority of cosmologists also, they don't necessarily like it, they don't necessarily understand it, but they appreciate, and they're good scientists, and they're following the evidence wherever it leads, and it's leading to this understanding. And the other biggie, well, first of all, the evidence for that, the mathematical signatures of that, which are all about relational dynamics at all scales, we're discovering and have been discovering for a number of years now. But the other biggie is that in 2022, the Nobel Prize for Physics was awarded to 3 researchers who had been investigating what's called non-local unity of our entire universe for years. Now, non-local unity means that the Tao is our natural state as conscious co-creators, and it's a both and. It means that within space-time there is also a causation. We can also tell a story of a universe that began nearly 14 billion years ago, and space has expanded and time's flowed ever since. And within that space-time exploration, that great thought that is our universe has evolved from simplicity to ever greater levels of complexity and individuated consciousness. So we can have this conversation. And it's a both and, because we can have this conversation and we can realize that we are divine individuations of the wholeness of the Tao. But that Nobel Prize in 2022 was given for this understanding of our universe. And the Nobel is only given for settled science. So all the folks who've been talking about materialism and separation had to, in 2022, they didn't have to, but basically the Nobel was saying, come on, time to move on. This is the nature of reality. This is who we really are. Now follow the science, but don't deny what the science is telling us.
Now that's incredible, considering we're looking at something that almost would, I don't know, I wouldn't be counting the minutes or the days, but let's just say Einstein's contribution to, you know, what is the nature of reality as of, you know, I think it's 100 years ago to that year. It's like, so this concept or theory of, you know, the collective being within the quantum model, is this, are you referring to this as more of a validated, fortified offering that can be summarized within those numbers that validate within the scientific community that this is no longer a theory, that this unified field, this non-localized unity is now, it's baked into the reality of all things, and we have evidence for that?
Sure, absolutely. And I think it goes beyond that, Sam, because obviously what Einstein's genius was to realize that regarding space and time, you know, most folks who know about anything about relativity understand that he said that, you know, space, or the measurement of space, is relative to an observer, and the measurement of time is relative to an observer. Now that is pretty clever, but he went beyond that. For me, his great genius was recognizing that we have to conjoin the notion of space and time into something called space-time. And the reason for that is that without that conjoining, we can't get something called invariant space-time. And without invariant space-time, which he understood, we can't have the laws of physics. We can't hang together as a universe. We can't have the universe that exists and evolves as ours does. So that was his major contribution. And of course, others, such as people like Max Planck, quantum physicists, were finding clues at the quantum scale that, you know, we cannot separate an observer from an observed. And also they understood very early on that for quantum mechanics to work at all at any scale, that the entire universe had to be what's called non-locally unified, which was what the clues at the quantum scale were showing. They said, look, it can't happen at this tiny scale if it's not happening as the whole universe. And that's what the Nobel in 2022, you know, said, absolutely, this is the case. But it was insufficient, because 100 years ago, as you say, the 20th century science about energy and matter and space and time. And now we realize that with all of those insights, that's not fundamental enough. And they've never been able to be conjoined at that level, because they are complementary expressions of something deeper. So now we need other understanding about the nature of information to actually take us a step forward. But of course, that is a slippery slope, because what we're talking about is not random data, it's meaningful information. And what this does is it absolutely brings mind and consciousness, not just centrally, into this understanding of reality. It's saying that mind and consciousness are reality, not just human. I'm talking about universal here. I'm talking about cosmic consciousness and universal consciousness, and us as microcosmic, co-creative, conscious beings. But this is wonderful, because not only is it turning everything on its old paradigm head of materialism and separation, son, but it's vitally much, much more than a scientific revolution. It's a revolution in us remembering. I mean, you already do this. This is your work. This is how you serve everyone in your community. But this now is this convergence of science and universal wisdom teachings, indigenous teachings, spiritually based teachings. This is the great convergence that we've never had as a species. And this, to me, is an invitation of our entire universe to evolve, to wake up, to remember, to grow up, to evolve.
I really love that, because the experiencer, the Taoist seeker, Taoism has been very clear through its indigenous rituals that have been handed down for thousands and thousands of years. All the stuff that I teach people for eternal alchemy practices to acquire a state of awareness, to harness what they perceive as a very slow 3D reality and alter it at will in the present moment, being that now moment. That comes from a deeper knowing. So you have to be able to experience. So for me, I'm a show me guy. There's only so much talky, we much walky. Or moreover, go right back to the basic. I'm an 80s person too. I love the 80s. So I'll take the Pepsi challenge with anyone on this one. When it comes down to experiencing a change, whether it's manifestation, magic, healing, that can be obtained now. And I mean, from your own admission, I believe you and I have had similar experiences. I experience what someone would consider a miracle on a daily basis. And that's just, what I consider a low level manifestation, which is physical healing on a daily, whether it's so obscurely weird that someone thinks it's superhuman. I mean, honestly, in 30 years, I've seen everything. People are like, well, what does that really mean? Bones fusing, flesh going from gangrenous to back in pink in color in 40 minutes. I've seen it all. And this is a daily sort of thing that you go through and you go, well, hang on, well, that's ridiculous. That can't happen. And then when you witness it, or your, as Tom would say, your attention intention alters the large consciousness system. So your probability changes. All bets are off, as this is your journey. And we remind the Taoist seeker, your truth is the only truth you need to be concerned with. And people get, authoritarians get a little uppity, a little punchy when you start giving people the idea that they can be empowered and their truth is the only truth they need to be concerned with. Their knowing is it, the absolute, which I feel like a lot of people go in this incredible space. Everyone has their absolute truth, and it is their truth. But what happens is it's when it becomes a forced sort of play of hand for many that this is the only truth. And I always remind people, when that happens, about face and run in the other direction.
Wise guidance.
And so with that experience, you've had this journey through the validation. Now, within Taoist alchemy, this is the stuff that people get all warm and fuzzy about because it's evidence-based stuff. It has to be self-evident. It has to be realized. There has to be a validation. So the idea of a lot of this stuff is more conceptual. I feel warm and fuzzy inside. I did a meditation. I feel relaxed. There's still this missing component of synchronicity, serendipity. The now moment for a Taoist is the alchemy. So you can cultivate and take the simplicity of what someone would use as a periodic table and use the cosmology, which we have an affinity for within Taoism. That's the whispers of the universe that create our very guidance. And it's referred right back to one of my own teachers that I channel on a daily, Yellow Emperor, who's his admission through the Chinese culture landscape as we know it today came from the seed of his relationship with the universe thousands of years ago. So, we have this direct source, and I know that you do this also. Some people might refer to it as Akashic Records, Halls of Amente, however you want to pronounce it. There is evidence that becomes realized that all of a sudden this space-time, time-space is now being altered in what we consider the present moment, and you're getting this evidence for yourself as a seeker in all these different forms. What do you recommend for people that are looking to find more of this evidence base? How would you propose or get them to consider what it is that they need to be aware of or start somewhere? And it's always the epiphany, right? The chasing of what I call the metaphysical spiritual dragon is that very moment they get a glimpse. I heard audio. I saw my grandmother. I thought about something and someone called me. I had this vision. Next minute, I won $1 million. they get a glimpse, and it's like, kind of like that Death Star moment, if you've ever seen the Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker comes into the Death Star. There's that that's the Wu-Ji for a Taoist. That center point is when you hit it, and everything is realized. So that moment is that part where, okay, I've had a taste, and that's where I get most people on my doorstep. They travel the world to come down here because they want to learn the real stuff. And, you know, this is electromagnetic spectrum. It is not the substance that a Taoist calls the chi, the mother, perfection. This dukkha, as my dear friend Martin, the Buddhist monk, would call the distortion of this 3D reality, is the very distraction of a human's journey as separated. To become whole, as we keep referring through this conversation, to return to who we are, there is this need to validate it. It becomes just a delusional state that most people just say, I'm having some type of, because 30 years ago, part of the training that I have as a Taoist priest is, you know, very indigenous rituals like exorcisms, clearings, dowsing, all that kind of stuff. So that was 30 years ago, I'd have someone come to me being diagnosed with a psychotic episode and realize, oh my goodness, finally I found someone that knows what's going on with the very state that I'm in, and altering the energetics realigns them. And today, to the admission of most people, I wouldn't even have that person because they wouldn't even turn up on my doorstep. They would have an epiphany. They'd download the Palladians. The next minute, open a YouTube channel and get 100,000 followers. I'm channeling the Palladians. This is a different world that we're in now. This conscious collective is being raised where people are coming to that conclusion on a much faster pace. What would you suggest, or how someone would broaden their now moment?
Well, first of all, I don't think there's a single answer. I don't think there is a one size fits all at all. I mean, that's the joy of a universe whose unity is expressed in radical diversity. And as you say, that diversity and that evolutionary arc from simplicity to complexity and ever greater levels of individuated self-awareness itself evolves through time. So as you say, San, I mean, you know, 10, 20 years ago, people perhaps were struggling or challenged or whatever in terms of experiences of these sorts. People are now moving through them much quicker. We're also getting, you know, souls being born now, you know, that are coming in and not forgetting where they've come from. And it's, you know, our job perhaps as elders to ensure and support and nurture them so they don't forget. Whereas I suspect when you were growing up, when I was growing up, I never told anybody about my experiences. I could have told my mum and I know she would have been accepting, but I suspect anyone else would have said imaginary or you're psychotic or delusional or whatever. And it just didn't occur to me to share any of them until I was well into my adulthood. And then I only did because people were finding me out and saying, I've never told anybody else this, but. And so that was opportunities to share and support. So going back to what you just said about the ways in, for me, possibly one of the most simple ways in is to trust your intuition, because our intuition is our natural superpower. It's we're all born with it. We all have it in here. Yeah. And if we actually are just willing, and there's a willingness here, isn't there? There's an openness and a willingness here to listen to it and to follow it. And it's just an invitation to do that. But I would say that can be the easiest, that can be the most common way into this incredible adventure. And it's a step-by-step process. The more we trust our intuition, the more we get validated through that trust. The more we trust it, the more the validation comes. And for me, and you mentioned the word synchronicity, I mean, synchronicities are everyday miracles, and they don't violate the space-time of our universe, but they come into the here and the now moment, which of course is beautifully Taoist wisdom. So by honoring synchronicities and being willing to sort of, you know, be grateful for the opportunities they can open up, again, is an amazing, for me, an expansive way of journeying on this path of adventure. And the other ways, and you mentioned it right at the beginning of our conversation, for me, one of the most healing things that we can do is to literally remember our relationship with our planetary mother. And as simple as just being with a tree, being with a plant, going outside, taking our shoes off, feeling our toes within the grass, looking up at dawn and being grateful for a new day, looking up at a full moon and being amazed at the wonder of our star, our sun, and our moon look exactly the same size in the sky, even though they're vastly different sizes, they're vastly different distances from us. That for me has been a cosmic miracle that I've loved since I was a child. But, to regain our sense of wonder. There's so many ways, but for me, it's that gratitude, it's that joy, it's that love, it's that trusting that, we are meaningful, we are purposeful, because how could we not be when our universe is meaningful and our universe is purposeful? And then choosing to remember that we're members of its vast communities of life, trusting ourselves to know that and to live our lives from that place of trust.
Yeah. Again, it's so beautiful how, as we put it, all rivers return back to the ocean.
Yeah.
It's like there is no, hang on a second. Excuse me for 1 second. Just, I don't want to miss this. My laptop was about to die. I'm like, please, no. Apologize. And then that return is really interesting because it comes in all these different facets, and there is no right. I always remind people there's no right or wrong way up the mountain. There's a million different ways. The second you dismiss someone else's belief system, you dismiss your own. And so, I think the what's attractive about a Taoist path is sort of like this Gnostic self-realization, this knowing that comes from your relationship. And so within, channeling being the highest ascension for a Taoist awareness, and it normally comes in 9 stages. We start with the physical body, energetic body, spiritual body, sun body, moon body, earth body, oneness body, ultimate body, and then being all things. And so this stage of awareness is a developmental skill. It experiences self-realized sort of evidence-based level of awareness. You have to start somewhere. And most people are like, oh, well, just sing Kumbaya and be in the moment. And I do appreciate that. I feel as though it's important that there's an entry level because people want to have a method. Because from a humanistic perspective, as you start to realize you are all things, that then there is no separation. But you must at least start with this idea. Human beings want hetero action. What they start, they must finish. So it's like, oh my goodness, I need a little bit more. I'm here, and clearly my intuitive side is telling me this. And so you have these people, and I have a lot of students that have PhDs, they're scientists, they're a bunch of things. And one of them came to me, and we have this ancient practice where we open up the middle dantian, which is basically observing the death of a star, the raising of the red phoenix, and opening up black hole energy. And people are like, that sounds kind of crazy. That's a weird. Well, it's an evolutionary expansion of this now moment. And so he came to me and he goes, Jifu, you're not going to believe what I found. And I'm like, okay, what did you find? Well, I got this research paper. I'm doing this. I'm working on the nucleus of a cell. I'm like, okay. You wouldn't believe what I found in the nucleus of a cell. I'm like, please tell me. Black hole energy. And I'm like, what? Is that, what are the chances of you coming across this formula that you perceive as this entry level to what you think is indigenous, experiential, something that you're feeling that has been validated for thousands of years by seekers, and it comes through as this sort of visceral experience? And he's like going, I'm getting evidence that this something is going on. There's a unified realization going on here. I'm like, that's very exciting. All I get is that it comes in the form of feeling it. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And I think that's that universal component that you and I are getting at, which is that feeling component. And, you know, the indigenous stuff is feeling it. You have to experience it. It has to be a contracting or expanding.
Yeah.
And so when he came to me with that, I was like, okay, that's exciting. And he was profoundly blown away by the idea that there was a correlation with all these things. And to me, I'm just like, okay, this is your experience as a, you know, scientist or whatever you want to call it, splitting, you know, I don't know, some in some way, shape, or form. When you get to this level, you are limited. That's why I find your journey is so unique, because you've merged everything, and you're remembering who you are from many, many, many past lives has brought you to this point where you're able to be the diplomat that can communicate the two worlds that are something that people would call esoteric. And then you have this science and you're putting it together, and people are like, you're blowing my mind, because it makes sense to me now.
What you just said is so important, because it seems to me that what we are saying, people know this within themselves, you know, so there is this aha-ness. It's not, oh, that's odd, that's strange. There's much more of a remembering. There's much more of a, oh, this makes sense, you know. And as you say, son, it makes sense because it's bodily, it's embodied within us. You know, I talk often about, it's not just understanding this, it is experiencing it and it is embodying it. And it's those three. And in a way, whatever your journey inward, whatever your sort of way in, and it may be understanding, but it may not be. For me, it's the experience, because the experience can sort of open the curiosity to understand. And the experience deepens the recognition of embodiment and the realization of embodiment. So the experience for me is that pivot point that you can reach from that to bring all of this into, you know, your lived realization of remembering. So I love that. And I love that. I love what you said, because there are so many paths up the same mountain. I mean, this is what spiritual traditions at their deepest have always taught. And if you're only going, you know, your own route is perfect. But if you deny others' routes, then you're denying your own route, because they're all paths up to this remembrance of wholeness, this remembrance of who we are.
Yeah, I mean, the channeling aspect for any seeker to refine the information,
Yes.
to realize you can access something that goes beyond what you would consider your intellect. You're now accessing something that is greater. And so for channeling, we refer to that as a dialogue. And that dialogue turns into a monologue with the mother as things, right? This is this present moment. This is what takes place, which is the now.
Yes.
Now, do you, I believe you get a great insight through your own practices or channeling yourself. And how does that reflect on past, present, and future validation for you as the catalyst and conduit for this sort of information? We call it the information here. The sun is the light, which is the upper dantian. The earth is the middle dantian, which is the information. And the lower dantian, strangely enough, which is against all internal alchemy that blows people's minds, is the moon. It's the combination of the two, which people are like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Well, that's the whole point of Taoism. Taoism is two steps to the side, one left, one turnabout, hopping on one leg, and you go backwards 3 feet. And then people go, what is that? Why do you guys do that stuff? Because nothing is ever as it seems. And if you realize that everything is a bellows, and you are all things and nothing at the same time, when you're at your lowest, you're really at your highest. Or like,
I love the parallax, and I'm not going to call it paradox, because I don't see Taoism as paradoxical. I see it as parallaxical. In other words, we're looking at different perspectives from the wholeness, and we're looking at them, different angles, different perspectives, but they all come as part of the wholeness. And that's what I so love and respect about the Taoism, the Tao tradition.
Well, that's what we call perfection, which is the diamond.
Yes.
And so everything is a facet of the diamond of perfection, which is consciousness. So each facet is that ability to observe this incredible, offering that is perfection manifest. And, it comes in all forms, that mirroring effect that people are a little perplexed by, and understanding what that really means, because it comes in like the Tao Te Ching. I just transcribed with Latsu a couple of months ago, a 2024 version, and he gave me, basically, if I don't need sustenance for my physical body, I could sit here for days on end taking information from these guys. I have over 171 different teachers within my Taoist lineage, and it becomes a very interesting sort of like relationship. But it's like, wow, you're so insightful. It's so powerful. I don't know anything. I'm as dumb as monks. But the information comes through, and it's really like, whoa, you can't make this stuff up.
I know. It's wonderful. And what you describe is that what Tao describes as diamond, Vedic tradition describes as Indra's net. And Indra's net describes the reflectivity of a cosmos, which is comprised of multiple jewels. And the facets of each jewel reflects the other jewels, and they're connected by golden light and all the rest of it. So it's very, very similar in perspective. And that, in modern parlance, is a hologram. Because in a hologram, the wholeness of the hologram is reflected in each part of it, each pixelation. So the whole is reflected within each part. Each part reflects the whole, that in-breath, out-breath, that wholeness. It's Hermetic tradition, as above, so below. When you go through all of the universal wisdom teachings, all have this incredibly profound perspective of the wholeness of the nature of reality, expressed through diverse, multidimensional aspects and levels, and all sentient, all part of that cosmic awareness, which is absolutely wonderful. But I was going to go and say something else. I think it's gone. But you said earlier something about that I just wanted us to come back to, which again is multiple traditions, which is this understanding of Akasha, which is the understanding of the Tao and the whole story. And of course, with the holographic model of cosmology, the boundary of what we call space well, the whole thing is holographic, a holographic projection. But the whole boundary of space, since the beginning of our universe, as space has expanded and time's flowed forward, the reason space needs to expand with this understanding is for ever more information to be experienced within this evolutionary journey of our universe. So that boundary of remembering the whole story of our universe is essentially Akasha. It's whatever the traditions refer to that we can access, because we are microcosmic co-creators of this wholeness that is our universe. So we naturally have access to that wisdom and can then be guided in our lives through that journey. Our story is the story of our universe. We can go back 14 billion years. I often say the water in our bodies is only a few moments younger than our universe. So literally, I don't know how the Tao feels about this, because obviously the Tao is absolutely profound in that understanding of the here and the now. But for me, it's both and. It's the here and the now, because that's where we co-create. That's where we are. But we also have access to that extraordinary journey of evolution and emergence, and all the guidance that we can gain from that. And for me, that guidance both helps us heal our relationship with our planetary home, Gaia, and also to consciously evolve. But can I say something else about the moon? The reason I'd like to say something more about the moon is, do you know the best understanding we have for the birth of Gaia, for the birth of the Earth?
Well, please share it.
Okay. We know that about 5.5 billion years ago, in an interstellar molecular cloud of elements and prebiotic complex molecules, on the verge of biology and ice, those interstellar clouds exist now. They existed before our planetary system was born, and we have pictures of them. The James Webb Telescope has amazing pictures of them. But nearby, a star exploded as a supernova about 200 light years away, and part of that cloud collapsed into a protoplanetary disk, not randomly, but as resonant orbits around a protostar that became our sun, and the protoplanets around it became our planetary system, and including our planetary home Gaia. But in the early days, about 5 billion or so years ago, before Gaia became the planet she is, she was much smaller. She's where she is, pretty much, in terms of distance from the sun, but she was smaller. And the best understanding we have is that from the outer solar system, a planetary body about the size of Mars came in and crashed into, impacted this protoplanet that would become Gaia. And what happened was that that incomer came into what became Gaia, coalesced with her, but created an explosion or an ejection that became the moon. So when we look deep within the Earth, we find that the remnants of that planetary body, and they're denser than the other rocks of Gaia. And when we look deep into the moon, we find the same remnants. So most of the moon is basically that ancient planetary body that came from the outreaches of the solar system and actually helped birth Gaia and birth the moon. And her name was Theia. And in Greek mythology, Theia is the mother of the moon. So deep within our planetary mother is our primordial grandmother. And our primordial grandmother is essentially our moon. So when you speak about the moon here in Taoism, it speaks to me that lineage that very, very few people know about as yet. And now it's becoming known because we've got all the evidence.
Well, that to me is, again, an aha moment, knowing that I have what some people would consider not blind faith, but knowing of all the information that's shared with me on a daily basis. Now I'm going to go into great counsel with my teachers today and get greater insight. There are no coincidences that this reveal today. I just, when I teach the alchemy, people get really traditional alchemists that refer to a periodic table, and then they attempt to do sort of more transferred energetic things that would create this sort of idea of. But when you really understand how to move that electromagnetic potential, you do crazy things. Like, I can do all the circus trick stuffs, like, envelop my body in, anesthesia and run skewers through my arm, and there's no entry or exit point. This is part of cultivation. I think within Taoism, there's a certain point of, okay, this access to your 50 trillion cells and being the maestro of that, then that potential of that 0.07 millivolts of electricity is realized, and then all of a sudden you do things that you call super normal or super normal that most people would not even believe is possible, like instant healings, distant healings, these types of things where you have this aha moment. You take someone who's completely in a state of disarray, someone who may have had a PTSD for 40 years of their natural born life, and I can erase it in like 5 seconds, and it never returns. A year later, they're like, how did you do that? Well, I didn't do anything. I just happened to be acquiring and presenting a resonance that helped you remember who you were. And from that moment, poof, You just came and returned back full circle to that now. And that access that you're speaking of is that deeper understanding of, you know, from a sensory perception perspective, because I kind of blanket that, you know, when people go, oh, you're a priest, well, that sounds dusty and old and boring. Well, within Taoist alchemy, you know, it seems like that, but, you know, I've been teaching people clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling, physical healing, all that kind of good, sexy stuff that everyone wants to learn. Oh, Taoist alchemy, Taoist magic. And when you truly align yourself, you become abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. So then this whole separation that we speak of is like we return to the bellows, which means that everything is contracting, expanding at the same time. You're all and nothing at the same time. Man, it's not like that. And people are like, well, am I not man? No, you're identifying with the flesh and blood that mirrors back at you when you get up in the morning as your identity. When you return and you realize that you are not of this physical body, what can harm you? Oh, that sobering aha moment is when you're not distracted by the human condition, which is part of sort of like your bruises and licks and ups and downs that acquire this realization of servitude. Because really, when you're in this state, this selfless state, you know, right from an incantation that the Jade Emperor shares with us all the time, I think you'll find this quite interesting. A power abundant in its giving you will receive, unifying the body with the spirit with the energy, bringing heaven to earth, transcending all is one, one is all, revealing perfection manifest. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. That is your gift. That is your offering. And that visceral, the oscillating experience you and I are having physically is that now moment that you're experiencing, that this is not just some toss away words. These are embedded deeply at a subatomic level. This is magic. This is the now moment. This is real. And so, you know, that, what does that refer to? People go, Jeffrey, well, what does that mean? I want the alchemy stuff. I want the sexy electromagnetic stuff that I look like I'm a guru. I levitate. I do all these crazy things. I stop my heart. These are all effects of your realization that you get very tired of quite quickly, and they become you know, if I had a dollar for this type of stuff, and it does, it excites you to realize there's something greater, and then you move on. And that's your awareness. But what happens is that servitude, that selflessness becomes your default. You're returning back to being an ambassador to this earth and raising the conscious collective and embracing humanity to help them remember who they are.
Yes.
And that is the true essence of a Taoist seeker in everything that I've taught and everything that I know, and the teaching for thousands, tens. People go, well, how many thousands of years? Tens, hundreds of thousands of years. And people are like, there's only documented pictographs and, you know, oracle bone reading dated back to 6000 BC. Well, I just access talking to Latsu or talking to Jade Emperor or talking to Yellow Emperor, and they give me information presently. I share it with you as a catalyst and a conduit, and the visceral experience that you have is a validation. You know it's real.
Yeah.
And wow. And then you apply it, and then you go, wow, okay, this is no joke. And the magical register being the Tao Te Ching. So a Taoist seeker will use that. Every verse is an incantation. Every verse levels of consciousness that you acquire, plus an actual frequency. So people tend to go, well, what does all that mean? It's a mirroring effect. This is what it does. It keeps bringing you and reminding you who you are. Every incantation is the perfect letter, the perfect word, the perfect moment that reminds you that this is now. And you go, hang on, whoa, I've just got the aha. I just realized this is it. If I give, I receive. And it's not a karmic model of giving and receiving, which gets skewered within a lot of people's esoteric sort of internal practices. It's an understanding that this is what you are experiencing is this contracting and expanding. And so
I agree. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. But the interesting thing for me, though, son, as well, is all of that, which I wholeheartedly appreciate and agree with. It's what you said earlier about the sun, the earth, and the moon, because it seems to me that, you know, because of the holographic nature of reality, what we're doing, we're expanding our awareness, because, of course, you know, our entire solar system is a mesocosm of the macrocosm. So we're microcosmic, mesocosmic, macrocosmic. So the fact that the Dantian aspects are really very, very much embodying that mesocosm, and especially the relationship of sun and earth and moon, and I would add Thea into this, is because Thea really is like the deepest ancestral voice of our entire solar system in that mesocosmic consciousness. So I would love to at some point hear back, as when you communicate and have this understanding that you get, how that might actually be, because I'm seeing this as evolutionary, because the understanding of Thea now is coming forward at an evolutionary moment. You know, as both the Tao and astrology teaches us, you know, we're literally remembering the entirety of our solar family now. So there's things coming into our conscious awareness that was not in our conscious awareness hitherto. So I would be really, really intrigued and love to hear back from anything that your sense is offering in terms of this evolutionary arc that we're continuing on, you know, this emergent process, this birthing process that we're part of.
Well, that's, I mean, I could go deep into how that becomes the merging of the sun and the moon, the collective electromagnetic, and then you create that oneness. That's that lower Dantian, which is the moon representative of that, which makes complete sense when you refer to the primordial realization of that creation.
Yes.
And so, you know, we refer to that primordial realization through embryonic breathing. And so you are breathing from consciousness.
Yes.
When you master that skill, which we use the breath as the carrier, we use the breath to move the energy. We use the mind to move the energy. So you're moving energy with your mind through Nigong, internal alchemy, Nidan, which is internal alchemy. And we use Qigong, which is basically the energetic power. Moving that with the breath and the mind creates the merging of that conscious and unconscious process, making it one from, you know, a physiological, neurological aspect of brain waves and all the rest of it. You get to, you know, gamma brain waves. You know, I witness physical healings at anywhere between 100 and 400 hertz. Other than I look like I'm schwitzing in a sauna because I'm running so much juice through my body, it looks like a very interesting experience. But it's more, you take a stick, put a marshmallow on it, and you can cook it through the transmission of heat. This is part of channeling. This is part of but it's also identifying this mastery. And I always say that because you want to return to yourself. If people are not mastering this energetic potential, it can be problematic because you're subject to your personality. Until you step past that emotional content as being the controlling factor of your human experience, you will repeat this sort of fear-based limitation.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
Well, very much. I mean, in different languaging, but 30, 25 years ago now, I was very much guided that I'm working on a chakra basis in that regard rather than a Dantian basis, but that, you know, we were able now to access what I referred to then as the 8th chakra of the universal heart, midway between heart and throat. So when that started to be guided through me, and there's a whole story, we could have a whole other hour on this, and that began to be activated, I realized that this was expanding our awareness from the personal to the transcendental. and that it's opening, it's being activated now as part of our evolutionary potential. So for the last 25 years, like, you know, you and many of us have been sort of serving this emergent potential. So I talk about the universal heart opening within us. I talk about not our universe beginning as a big bang, but as a big breath, an ongoing big breath. So the big breath of our universe breathes through us in each of our little breaths, which goes back to what you were saying about the breath. So it's there's a profound similarity between, you know, what my work has come to be and to serve, and the guidance that I've been getting, and exactly what the Tao and what your own guidance has been revealing. The similarities are wondrous and perfect in that regard. And I know we could go on for much more, but what I'd love to do at some point, if you feel it's appropriate, I would love us to return, because my time today is this hour. I'd love to talk about the evolutionary impulse of our universe flowing through us. I'd love to share what you understand of this expansionary emergent potential and what we're discovering that has not been understood, that has maybe been hinted at in the lineage of the wisdom teachings, but is now coming into manifestation, realization, potentizing.
I would love to engage in that, and we will set that up. On a brief summary, it's the three pure ones, my teachers: supreme purity, jade purity, highest purity; supreme purity, keeper of the sun; jade purity, keeper of the earth; highest purity, keeper of the moon. They are the co-creators with the mother of the cosmos.
Yes.
So this is sort of like how it sort of integrates, and what you're talking about, the ancient practices. And yeah, we can go deep into how that was acquired, but in the numerology aspect of it, we talk about the highest power, the highest number is 9 within Taoism, and that 9 is reflected through everything from concept, from concept to creation of human life. What a coincidence, it's 9 months. I have no idea how that's just a coincidence, or perhaps maybe it's the creation of all things. Who knows? That center point is always that return.
Absolutely. And 9, you know, and trinities and 9s. I love all of this, and numerology. I mean, you know, God is number ultimately. And what we're seeing here is the resonance of how the numerology actually is a fundamental aspect of the manifestation. So yes, so much more to explore.
I am so grateful for your company today in this incredible conversation, my dear friend, and I am looking forward to future conversations, and I really want to book that in as soon as possible, because we have much to talk about. And maybe you could just block out a couple of hours, realizing we're just going to lose ourselves, because you're just I'm very grateful for you.
Well, thank you, San, and for you too. And yes, let's do that, and let's continue this conversation and exploration.
Yes. And I mean, it's just so people have aha moments. I just love just being part of that catalyst for someone else's realization, that opportunity where they shift just from hearing one word, one sentence, one breath through our conversation will help someone else realize profound change that returns to who they are. So in closing, I will thank you, my dear friend. I'm going to put all your social media and all ways that someone can get in touch with you. One last question before you leave. I know you're going to leave. What's your definition of consciousness?
Oh, end with an easy question. I would say that for me, the definition of consciousness is self-awareness. And I would define mind and consciousness as complementary. But for me, mind is the nature of reality. Mind is the nature of reality. Consciousness is the self-awareness of reality. And ultimately, its foundation is love.
Wow. This has been such an incredible conversation today. I'm so grateful for you. I want to thank you, my dear friend, for spending your time with me today. I want to thank the universe for bringing you into my life. I want to thank the audience for sharing their time with us today. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master San Qing, And I'll see you on the next one, guys.